Immy and the Chimney Conundrum. Immy had always been known for his adventurous spirit and knack for finding himself in peculiar situations. One chilly winter evening, this knack led him into a situation he would never forget. Immy was on his way home from a friend's party when he realized he desperately needed to use the bathroom. The small town he lived in had no public restrooms open at that hour, and his house was still a good 20 minutes away. Desperation led him to look for alternatives. As he wandered through the quiet streets, he noticed the lights of Mrs. Patel's house. Mrs. Patel was a kind, elderly lady known for her hospitality. However, Immy had once accidentally broken her garden gnome, and since then, he'd been too embarrassed to face her. But tonight, nature's call was stronger than his pride. Sneaking around the back of Mrs. Patel's house, Immy noticed a small window slightly ajar. It led to the kitchen, and beyond it, he could see the hallway that led to the bathroom. He hesitated, thinking of simply knocking and asking, but the embarrassment held him back. Instead, he concocted a plan to sneak in quietly, use the bathroom, and leave without anyone noticing. Immy was slim, and he figured he could fit through the window. But as he got closer, he realized the window was too small. His eyes then fell on the chimney. It's just like in the movies, he thought, where characters slide down chimneys effortlessly. Without giving it much more thought, he decided this was his best option. Climbing onto the roof wasn't easy, but Immy managed. The chimney looked wide enough, so he took a deep breath and began his descent. At first, it seemed like it was going to work. But halfway down, the chimney narrowed, and Immy found himself stuck. Panic set in as he realized he couldn't move up or down. Immy tried to call for help, but his voice was muffled by the thick chimney walls. The cold was biting, and he could feel the heat from the fireplace below, which wasn't exactly comforting in his position. After what felt like an eternity, Mrs. Patel finally heard a faint noise coming from the chimney. Curious and a bit frightened, she approached the fireplace and was startled to hear Immy's muffled cries for help. Recognizing his voice, she quickly called the fire department. Within minutes, the firefighters arrived, and with a lot of effort, they managed to free Immy from his sooty prison. As he was pulled out, covered in soot and shivering, Mrs. Patel couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. "Immy, what on earth were you thinking?" she asked, shaking her head. Immy, thoroughly embarrassed, explained his predicament. Mrs. Patel, ever the kind soul, guided him to the bathroom and waited outside with a fresh set of clothes from her grandson's old wardrobe. When Immy finally emerged, she handed him the clothes and a cup of hot cocoa. "Next time, Immy, just knock on the door and ask." "There's no need for such antics," she said gently. Immy nodded, deeply grateful and thoroughly chastised. He had learned his lesson the hard way. Sometimes, all it takes is a little humility to avoid a big mess. From that day on, whenever Immy felt the urge to sneak around, he remembered the chimney and Mrs. Patel's kind advice, opting instead to simply ask nicely. The end.